All right, everybody, thanks for coming. This is my third Unconfiscatable. I'd like everybody to give a large round of applause, not only to Tone Vays for putting this on, but for all the people in the background that help, including Muzzman. Where are you, brother? He's really in charge. I think this is one of the best Bitcoin conferences in the world, along with BitBlock Boom in Texas. So if you're not going to that one, I highly recommend you sign up for that. Gary Leland does a great job. And if you're interested in Bitcoin, like most of the people here, this is where you want to be. This is not a shitcoin conference. We only care about Bitcoin. That's why we're here. So Tony asked me to use up a few minutes. It's a good thing most people aren't here because I'm not that important. But I have a story. We all have a story. How did we find Bitcoin, right? So some of you may have known or may have heard me say this. When I was a kid growing up, I had to take everything apart. I just was so curious how things worked inside. And so I grew up in an analog world. It was not a digital world. There was no internet. There were no cell phones when I was a kid. So the logic of how anything worked in the physical world was pretty obvious to me as a kid. And so I lived around this logic. Everything had to make sense in my world. If somebody said to me, well, this is what we do, my immediate thought was, why? And, you know, how's it work? What's the logic? So I go through life. I'm a builder. I build homes. And so my attitude towards plumb and level is irrelevant. If the building is going to come out right, I have to align with what we know as first principles. So you can deny that gravity exists. You can not even like it. But if you walk off the ledge over there, it doesn't care, right? So first principles are these things that they act on us regardless of our knowledge of them or our attitude towards them. So, like many people, when I heard about Bitcoin for the third time 5 years ago, I said, okay, this looks interesting, and this whole number go up technology is certainly interesting, so I need to find out what this is. Is it a scam? And, or is it something I can put some money into and maybe gain some value out of it? So for me, I couldn't trust anybody. I needed to know how it worked. So I spent more than 6 months studying, and I was very fortunate to, in the very early part of my journey, I found Tone Vays on the internet. And Tone and several other people made sense to me. Their logic and reason was consistent. And the phrase, don't trust, verify, was one of those things I learned about early on. And I said, all right, I don't know this guy, but sounds good, so let me see if I can verify. And I just kept doing that. And little by little, I started to understand how Bitcoin worked. And just backing up for a second, I believe that money, in general, is one of the most important constructs that humanity has ever come up with. We have been able to move away from barter and to specialization, and we have grown as a humanity worldwide because of the concept of money. Bitcoin, in my opinion, is the best form of that money, of money in general. And so to me, Bitcoin is the most important invention in all of human history. Actually, it's a discovery, because the principles that operate Bitcoin are first principles that we don't control, like numbers and math. And so for me, a guy growing up in the analog world and studying the digital world, I can't read code and I can't really understand what it's doing, but I can't see what it's doing, but I can understand what it's doing. And when the logic fell into place about all the pieces of the puzzle that make Bitcoin work, to me it was like, lightning hit me, an epiphany, and I could never, ever turn away at that point. I found something that was a human created in a way, but adheres to a whole bunch of these first principles that sort of guided my life. And so it's now my mission to just help everybody in the world understand this really important thing that we now have. So most of the people I think in this room are already pretty sold on Bitcoin. I probably haven't said anything that most people already don't believe or understand. This is potentially for anybody out there in the larger world that's watching this on a recording. Do your homework, study this stuff. It's really cool, it's really important. And the thing about Bitcoin is you don't have to trust the people in Bitcoin. You can trust the protocol of Bitcoin, which is immutable. No one's going to change it. And you can sort of count on it, which is one of these really cool things in life. So Thank you for listening to my little rant. Let's bring up the man of the hour right here. A lot of you people probably know who this is, but Mr. Mark Moss is going to tell us about how you can't really take Bitcoin, right? Bitcoin, come and get it. All right, brother.
Yeah, Jim,
good luck.
Thank you. From one surfer to another. Thanks, Surfer Jim. Yeah, we're going to talk about, unconfiscatable, the theme of what we're talking about, why we're all here right now. And it's really never been more relevant than right now, today. Now, let's see if my clicker works here. There we go. All right. So we're talking about Come and Take It. You might have seen this movie or heard of this movie from, it's called 300, and it's the story of the Battle of Thermopylae, which was about 450 BC. King Xerxes is coming through, and he's going to take on the Spartans. The Spartans were way overnumbered. If you guys haven't seen the movie, they put themselves in this little canyon. They were going to try to hold back the King Xerxes, and they came and he said, look, we have way too many people. You're all going to die. But if you lay your weapons down, maybe we'll let you live. And they said, come and take them. It didn't work out too well for them, but it became the rally cry, and it's been used throughout the ages. And Bitcoin is that rally cry. Now, Bitcoin, in my opinion, and I would imagine most of you here today also agree that Bitcoin equals freedom. Bitcoin equals freedom. We say in Bitcoin, not your keys, not your coins. And the entire world just found out over the last 3 weeks that is 100% true. If you don't have control of your asset, then you don't own it. It doesn't matter if you were in Canada and you were a trucker, if you were a single mother that donated $50 to a completely legal program and you got your bank accounts frozen, or if you're one of 3 global superpowers with nukes. Even your money isn't your money. As we found out, Russia had their entire reserve, $650 billion, seized by the United States. On top of that, they got their equities taken. So now their stock in Apple is gone. Their money is gone. And the IMF just announced that they're not going to exchange their SDRs anymore. Greg could talk more about this, but I can't imagine any nation in the world would ever want to hold dollars as reserves again anymore. And the whole world has found out front and center, even a sovereign nation with nukes, if you don't own your keys, you don't own your coins. Now, of course, we're at a Bitcoin conference, and we say Bitcoin, not crypto. There's a big difference between Bitcoin and crypto. One of the big common misconceptions that I hear a lot, this might come strange to some people here, but we do not need to decentralize everything. Not everything needs to be decentralized. We don't need to manage lettuce on the supply chain. That doesn't need to happen. We don't need to decentralize everything. What we need to decentralize is the money. We got to fix the money. We say we fix the money, we fix the world. And really, at the base of that, it's not just the money, but it's the payments. I heard Guy Swan talk about this on one of his podcasts and talking about Lightning being used, and he said it's the payments that we have to fix. That is the problem. That's what we're trying to decentralize. That's what we're trying to take the power away. And I know that comes as a shock. We don't need to decentralize everything. What we need is decentralize the money, take away the central banker's power to create more money at will, and of course, seize money from Canadians or from Russians. Now, I like to say that there is no freedom without the freedom to transact. That sits at the base of everything, and most people haven't really thought this through. But in America, for example, the Constitution guarantees us freedom to speech. Okay, that's great, I have freedom of speech, but if I don't have money to buy a computer to post stuff on the internet, how do I have freedom of speech? If I don't have money to pay for a pamphlet to pass out, if I don't have money to buy a microphone and talk, I mean, I guess I can talk in my house. I have freedom for that. But without payments, I don't have that. Freedom of assembly. We're guaranteed the freedom of assembly. But if I can't pay to put gas in my truck to drive there, if I can't pay for a hotel room when I get there, if I can't pay food to eat, there is no assembly without the freedom to transact. Freedom of religion. It's guaranteed, specifically guaranteed. But if the church can't pay for a building, if we can't pay for the people to work there, there is no freedom. So it sits with that fix the money, decentralize the money, fix the payments. That's where freedom comes from. Now, of course, That's the part they want to attack. That's the part they want to take down. So that is one of the biggest attack vectors that we have with Bitcoin right now. And this is where the battleground is going to be. One of the biggest objections I hear is, oh yeah, but they're going to make it illegal. Right? And they know that. It's that the attack vector is on that custody. And we're seeing this battleground play out in real time. As a matter of fact, in the last 2 weeks, we saw Rep. Davidson from Ohio. He put forth a bill. It's called Keep Your Coins Act. It's kind of weird that in America, with some of the strongest private property rights in the world, we have to pass a law that would allow us to keep our property. But that's where we are. So he sees that that's where the battleground is, and so luckily we do have some people that are putting forth bills like that to protect that. We have, the famous announcement of announcements coming. The Biden admin announced that they are going to be doing executive orders so they can regulate cryptocurrency. We don't know what that's going to be. My guess, again, custody. Of course, Janet Yellen, the Treasury, they have this unlimited budget now, so they can go start freezing any accounts they want that are somehow associated with some addresses that maybe they just don't like for who knows whatever reason. So that is the battleground, the custody aspect of it. And of course, that's what Bitcoin gives us. Now, this is a new problem. For a lot of people, they don't realize this, but this is a new problem. For all of history, we had commodity money. Commodity money, real things. We had rocks, we had feathers, we had seashells, we had yellow metal, we had gold. It was money for 5,000 years, and it was commodity money. It was very decentralized. You can go dig it out of the ground, collect your feathers, collect your rocks. You held them, you had custody, and you traded those things one-on-one with people. If I held it, if it was in my possession, it was mine. Very simple. That's how it's been for all of eternity. There was never a problem with custody until recently. And really, we could see it really started ramping up in 1933 when the Executive Order 6102 came through, which made it illegal for you to hold gold anymore. So gold was big, it was clunky, it was heavy, it was hard to transact, so we put it in the bank, and they gave us a paper gold certificate that represented a claim to that gold. The problem with that is that it was all centralized. All the gold was in the banks. They shut it down, went on a bank holiday. When they opened the bank back up, you weren't able to get your gold out anymore. And even worse, those 20 paper gold certificates that equaled an ounce of gold, now it took 35 of them. So not only did they steal your real money, they gave you worthless paper that was even devalued even more. And that's really where the attack, I believe, started. 1970, we had the Bank Secrecy Act. Under the Bank Secrecy Act, it was, to stop bad people from doing bad things, stop terrorism. And so you couldn't transact with cash over $10,000. You guys know that. Go to the bank, if you're going to withdraw cash, make sure it's less than $10,000. The big thing about this, though, is that in 1970, when that went through, $10,000 was worth about $80,000 today. So it's really gone a long way from there. But where it really kicked into overdrive is in the, Don't Kill Puppies Act, right? The Patriot Act. They always give these things some name that makes it sound like, of course, everybody's for that. Like, I don't want to kill puppies. Of course, I like that. They call it the Patriot Act. It was the day that Americans lost more freedom than any time in history. And it was the time when our money came under attack because you might do bad things with it. You might fund terrorism. And that's bad. Nobody likes that. So, of course, let's go for that. I'm a patriot. I don't want the U.S. attacked. And that's when custody really came under attack. And so really, it's only been heavily attacked in the last 20 years. A lot of us here are old enough to remember a day before that was the case. But this is the battleground that we fight right now, unconfiscatable. Now, in the United States and in most democratic countries, there's such thing called constitutions, and those guarantee us rights. The Constitution just quickly doesn't give us rights. The Constitution is supposed to limit the government. All right, think about it that way. But we have the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment guarantees us, it protects us from the government doing unwarranted search and seizures, meaning that they need a warrant to look at what we're doing and then potentially take our stuff, but not anymore. They want to see any transaction over $600. They want to shine a flashlight up your butt. If they don't like what it is, like Janet Yellen and the Treasury just said, they have unlimited power to freeze and seize your accounts. No due process. It's gone. The Fifth Amendment, the due process, as I said. So we used to be, innocent until proven guilty. So you might use your money to do something illegal. You might use your Bitcoin to do something illegal, but we're just going to take it because we don't want you to do that. So it's like you're guilty before you've done anything. It's kind of like that movie Minority Report, like pre-crime. You might drive your car into a crowd. Maybe you shouldn't have a car. You might eat food so you have some energy before you go kill people, so you probably shouldn't have food either. I mean, how crazy is this? Like, we can just keep chasing it down. But how about you're innocent until proven guilty? That's the way it's supposed to be. But what happens with these laws is they, start out good. It's unintended consequences. It's the Cobra effect, if you guys know what that is. I'm not going to tell the whole story, but it's this unintended consequence that happens. It's mission creep. It starts out good. It starts out with good intentions, and it slowly becomes bad. It becomes big. We have bureaucratic censorship happening right now. What does that mean? That means these are not laws, but we're being censored by bureaucrats who were not elected on laws that were not passed. So, for example, OnlyFans. They got cut off, payments. Can't get payments here for OnlyFans. It's not illegal, but whatever. Payment providers don't like it, so you can't transact. Shops that sell guns. In the United States, with the Second Amendment, guns are legal, but if you sell guns, that's high risk, and we don't want to allow you to collect payments. It's the mission creep. It starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And if you think that's a problem, just wait until CBDCs come out, right? That's programmable money, behavioral modification money that they can control. And what's happened is all of this becomes a honeypot of power and money. So with KYC, Know Your Customer, we have to put all of our information into a centralized database. They have control over the money. They see every single transaction that we have. They know what we're buying, how much we have, where we're going, and it becomes a honeypot. What do I mean by that? So like a giant database like Experian that has all your credit data, that's a honeypot. That means there's a treasure trove of data, and of course, hackers, criminals may want to get that information. But imagine when all of your information is in a centralized database, all of it. Imagine how big of a honeypot that is. Now, we were warned about this. Henry Kissinger famously told us that if you control the food, you control a nation. The FDA is poisoning us, telling us to eat a bunch of carbs in the morning and put all those, cut out the fat and put all those seed oils on our food. Control the food. If we control the energy, you control a region. So ESG narratives, right? How are they gaining control over the world? Through the energy. And if you control the money, then you can control the world. And so what we're witnessing right now is a coup of central bankers. And they've weaponized the system. Money is a tool. Money measures wealth. Money allows us to trade for goods and services. But now they're using it as a weapon. Of course, we're seeing it in real time in Russia. And it's a real risk, right? Instantly, like in Canada, your rights are just cut off instantly. No due process. You're kicked out of the financial system. You can't even feed your family. You can't even put, like I said, gas in your car. And really what this ultimately does is it enables global criminals. Now, you can't have more than $600 without us seeing exactly what you're doing because you might do something bad with that $600. Never mind the billions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars of weapons that we've given to the Middle East. Never mind that. But the $600 you have, that could be really bad. But you got to think, like, criminals have actually gotten pretty smart these days. Criminals with $600 don't do a lot. It's the criminals that have found themselves into politics and the criminals that have found themselves into banking. Those are the real criminals of the world today. They're global criminals, and they have access to all of your information, all of your payment history, and complete access to turn your life off with a switch. And the thing to understand with this is that you're always going to be on the wrong side, regardless of what side you're on. If you're left, there's people on the right. You're Republican, there's Democrats. You're pro-life, there's pro-choice. The world's divided. So, like, a lot of people I've seen cheering for sanctions, cheering for these things happening to Canadian truckers. But imagine if you were on the other side and that was being used against you. You're always going to be on the wrong side, which is why we shouldn't have these policies in place for anyone to use. But something's happening because of this. This is a massive catalyst that's happening right now. We know the UN's reported that there's about 2 billion adults in the world without access to the global financial system, which is a shame. 2 billion adults, that's more than half of the adults in the world. Now, pretty interesting, the internet has really changed things. Having a smartphone like this is like equality. Anywhere in the world, I could learn anything, I could meet anyone, I could do anything. A 15-year-old kid anywhere in the world could start an Instagram account and make $100,000. Oh, but not if they don't have access to the financial system. So we have all these people who have no access to the financial system, but it's even ramping up now. Like I said, the catalyst. So now all these Canadians were just kicked out. All of Russia just kicked out. Now, if I was having a party, I'm like, hey, you're too noisy. You go over there. And hey, you're doing this. You go over there. And people just start leaving, and they leave the party. Eventually, I'm the only one left at the party. And they're all having their own party over there. So we're kicking all these people out of the financial system. And what are they going to do? They're just going to go crawl in a hole and die? No, of course not. They're going to figure out a new system. They're going to figure out how to survive outside of the existing financial systems that's there. And this is the biggest catalyst that we're witnessing. So all of Russia, they'll just work outside the dollar. And any nation that wants their energy and their wheat, they're also going to work outside the dollar. We've seen no country is going to be safe holding it. Now, what I love about this is there's a quote from Socrates. He said that the secret of change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. So I can't change the financial system, but I can pull my money out and I can just go build a system over here. I can't change the education system as much as I'd like to, but I can pull my kids out of school and we can homeschool them. I can't change the media, but I can create my own media, which of course I have. If you're not following me on YouTube, you should, by the way, Mark Moss. I can't change the healthcare system, but I can use my money to go see my own doctor. But again, it all starts with the payments, and the payments allow us to build a parallel economy. This is the key point here. When you study what happened with the fall of the USSR and Russia in the 70s and the 80s, it was really driven by a few key people, in my opinion, Václav Havel, Solzhenitsyn. They wrote these books, and like the Gulag Archipelago, and they talked about how because communism under Russia was so harsh that it restricted them so much that they made their own markets outside. They built parallel economies. And what happened is because they built these parallel economies, it took the power away from the communists. What can they do to them when they're not in their system? And it was through the parallel economies that eventually caused the crash of communism, and that's where we're at today. We have our own money, the payments, that opens up the freedom for us to go build all the other things that we need. Education, healthcare, finance, health, etc. We can go build those parallel economies right now today. That is what will effect change. Like Socrates said, don't focus on fighting that old thing. You can't fight it. You can't change it. I mean, I guess still vote. Might as well go out swinging, but it's probably not going to do any good. So instead of fighting it, I'll just go over here. That's better. Focus on building the new. And so you guys might have seen, this is a new updated picture. You might have seen this old picture of this old tank, or this old cannon. There's a flag, and it says, "Come and take it." Of course, it started in the Sparta story I started in the beginning, but like I said, this has been used throughout history over and over. And the story of the original flag it's called the Gonzales flag. And the story behind the Gonzales flag is that in the 1700s, when some of America was still owned by Mexico, in Texas, they were called Texians at the time. And it was part of Mexico, and Mexico had given them this little old cannon. And the cannon was really symbolic. It wasn't really a good cannon. It was hardly usable. And the Texians started to want their independence from Mexico at the time. This is leading up to the story of the Alamo, if you guys know that story. And so they got this little cannon, and then the Texans started to want their own independence. They, no taxation without representation. You don't know what we want down there in Mexico City. We want our independence. And so they said, well, then we want our cannon back. And the Texans are like, you want your cannon back? This thing's worthless anyway. They said, yeah, we want our cannon back. So they sent a delegate of troops, Mexican troops, up to Texas to reclaim the cannon. And the Mexicans said, hey, you know, we want the cannon. If we don't get the cannon, we're going to attack. We have way too many people. You're all going to die. We're going to give you some time to think about that. So the Mexican army had positioned themselves just south of the river, camping, and the Texians, so they're called at the time, they got the cannon, they put on a little cart, and they went through the night, and they dragged the cannon all the way through the desert. And this little cannon that it was barely usable, they positioned it right on the Mexican army, and they fired that thing, boom, right on them. They said, you want the cannon? Come and take it. And so, that's how it is with Bitcoin. But they're going to make it illegal. Come and take it. I guess I have a couple minutes for questions. Is that right? If there's any.
If you have a question, come up to the mic, please.
I guess it was pretty self-explanatory. Oh, yeah.
So, what is your suggestion if you want to transact with Bitcoin? Oh, sorry. What is your suggestion if we want to transact with Bitcoin while still being protected by the Fourth Amendment?
Well,
I mean, I mine Bitcoin, right? But I mine it to an exchange. So, you know.
So part of the problem that you have to understand, remember about the building parallel systems, is that anytime you're transacting in the fiat system, that's their system. So all the problem, all the objections to any of this really comes down to where you're trying to exchange your fiat for Bitcoin or trying to exchange your Bitcoin back for fiat. So kind of the point you're making is like, how can I operate in their system without being required to follow their rules? The reality is, if you're going to play in their system, you're probably going to have to follow the rules. Because you're mining to an exchange, the exchange can just freeze your account, not your keys, not your coins. And so the point is like I said, not trying to change that, just go use your own system. So why not mine your Bitcoin to your own wallet and just spend directly off your Bitcoin?
What's really scary is I noticed a year ago, local Bitcoins where you can meet up with people, now they require KYC.
Yeah, there's HODL, that's still pretty good, and then you have like the BIS network as well that are pretty good, and then you have options like BitRefill or Paxful where you can exchange it for Visa gift cards or Amazon cards or Airbnb cards or whatever you want. And those are the parallel systems. Yeah.
Oh, guys, come up here. It's to avoid feedback. You can just hold it. It's fine.
Hey, Mark.
Yeah.
There we go.
Closer.
Closer? Yeah, okay. I really liked your rant, like all of it, and how you were building like them as how they were gathering power throughout the decades. My question would be, how do you see, like the other part that I see also gathering from them, like how they are controlling power is the narrative, what we consume, right?
Yep.
And how they divide us with different stories. So in the come and take it, how as we evolve and become bigger as a community of Bitcoiners, how do we how do you see us staying together despite all the narrative, like you're red, I'm blue, you're black, whatever?
Yeah, good question. So as I said, right, we don't need to change or spend energy fighting that system. So the question he's asking is the narrative. They control the narrative. So not only the money, they control the narrative. So I said we don't have to change the financial system. We can pull out. We don't have to change the media. So the media controls the narrative. But do they really, right? So you have CNN, their top show, Anderson Cooper. He gets about 600,000 views per episode. I've got more views than that on my YouTube channel, and I'm not even that big. Joe Rogan's getting 200 million views. So the alternative news is the true narrative. It's just not on public, mainstream TV. So how do you? So one, we don't need to change that. We've already just built our own parallel information network. Now, how do we protect ourselves, to your point, from being divided based off of identity politics, if you will? Well, a lot of that is just in your own discernment. So the old problem used to be, how do I get information? Today is, how do I discern the information that I have? And so just ask yourself basic questions. Who's telling me this? What are their ulterior motives that they might have? Things like that. Practice critical thinking. And then I think if you understand really things down to their first level concepts, right? First level thinking, then you can kind of see through that better. But I would say just opt out of that.